Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. And I appreciate your being here. So, a very quick introduction. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it, Lynn. I guess my phone doesn't work when it's sideways like that. I wanted the full view. For some reason, it's not doing it. So, we got it as is. Any case, um, get rid of this. All right, introduce myself for those that don't know me. And my name is Mark Ehrlichs. And hi, Maureen. Good to see you here. Um, and I am a healer by the grace of God. Hi, Myrna. Rana. Yay. Rana's here. All right. Good to see you, Rana. And you won't be seeing me, but I'll be seeing, you won't be seeing me and other people is the way that this Facebook thing works, but you will, I think, be seeing other names that are up there and little texts and things like that. And if there's any questions, or please, feel free to ask them. And so, in the meantime, my name is Mark Ehrlichs, and I am a healer by the grace of God. And we have tonight the gathering, and where people get to ask questions, and I do my darndest to be able to answer the questions and see what comes up. And I am assuming and hopefully praying so that it answers the question according to your needs and also reverberates with other people as well. Right now, we're right on time. And I got a great question from my friend. Oh, before we even start, I want to mention that we will be having an online apprentice training coming up, and Lynn will put up all that information. Please feel free to, Lynn, at any time, now and later as well, if you don't mind, please. And the apprentice training is going to be April 16th, 17th, and 18th online. It'll be live, and everyone will be able to participate. We're putting the big push on that. And the information will be announced on the newsletter on the website as well. And so, let me see here. First of all, I got a great question from my dear friend Yvonne in Arizona. And she wrote, I would like clarity on this perception, please. Here goes my silly question. In some beliefs and cultures and traditions, they talk about the scare, el susto, which is scared the soul out of you. And they say that happens when it goes through a traumatic shock due to someone's passing or an accident or whatever the cause. And the person is scared out of its soul. Well, then she goes on to say, then they feel anxiety and nervousness. Is it possible for the healer to do soul retrieval for the individual to restore from its fright? And is there such a practice as a soul retrieval of one's soul body? Or is it emotional pain that one is really experiencing and not the soul leaving out of the fright? Leaving out of fright. Thank you, Mark. Well, I think eventually what you did, you answered your own question as far as what happens. A lot of it is emotionally based. And my guess is that this perception goes back to just about every belief and culture and tradition in some form or another. And my perception is also that the psyche and the emotions are playing along with the mind as it displaces itself outside of the body until it comes back to its mind or begins to rationalize. In a more civilized society, we say that. So And so I guess you can say this phenomena happens as we displace for the moment from the soul as a result from the shock trauma, and also leaves impression within us until we go through what I refer to as the healing crisis. All shock trauma is really in this nature. I don't know of any shock trauma that doesn't fall into that, the scare, as you refer to it. And our soul does not leave us until it's time. It's just not possible. And so I really believe that we experience these things all the time, naturally anyway, when we go through shocks of life, which I refer to as shock traumas, which leave literally impressions within us. And it's almost like a setup for the next time, where we say, even in a reoccurrence of a injury, the impression is literally impregnated into, say, our arm. When we injure our arm, then a couple months later, or a year later, or 5 years later, we re-injure this arm, or the muscles start to deteriorate. And originally, it's from that original shock trauma that we experience. Or we see something happening with our parents. They might be arguing or something. And then later we start in life to develop the ulcer, or we start to develop the abdominal problems and the organs inside. And there's always inflammation in there. And it's almost like we started it through absorbing and observing the shock trauma of a situation we witnessed. It hit us so hard, or it bothered us so deeply. That's what I believe, and that's what I've seen quite often. And just like I always tell that the story again, the first time it comes to mind again, about that girl who was on the ground being tickled by her uncle, which I think I told last week. And here's this little girl who was, her uncle was on top of her, tickling her, trying to get a laugh out of her, when she didn't want to laugh, and it hurt her when he was tickling her, and it disturbed her psyche, and it just wasn't right for her body, and it actually hurt. So what she did, she held her breath like that to try to stop the pain. And it was from that moment on that she had asthma in her life. And here she is, 7 years old. The uncle's, much older, having fun. And so years later, she came to one of the healing circles, and I found the energy of that age, which I teach in the apprentice program. But I found the energy of the age at 7 years of age. And I kept wondering what it was. And then all of a sudden I saw this fellow, I had a sense that it was a relative, on top of her, tickling her, and it hurt, and she held her breath. And so I reminded her of this. She said, I remember that, I hated that, and it hurt me. And then it left. She no longer had the asthmatic condition in her life. Well, it was a shock trauma to her, and it was bedded within her. So we have the ability to, wonder about something, going off into a little different topic here than what Yvonne with the soul retrieval, but this pertains to the so-called soul retrieval as well, that if we take a look later in life at what had bothered us, or what had transpired when we originally, if we can look back over time, when did I have this last, and when was it before that, and when was it before that, we might come up with a specific situation. And if we separate ourselves from becoming involved. That means becoming objectively observant of us going through something without the emotion. We, we have to displace the emotion. And if we can do that, then we have the potential of breaking that shock trauma, the consciousness of it. And it won't affect us as much or at all anymore. So we have that capability to do that with many things. Not with everything, but with many things. So it's within our grasp to have the power of life and death over creation. In that sense, we have the ability to inhibit something from bothering us anymore in our lives. If it's emotionally based or later develops into the physical discomforts, like the story with the asthma that I just told of that young lady. So we have this within us, and to be able to control these things to varying degrees, and to not only control them, but to nip them in the bud, and where we can inhibit them from developing even further later in future. So I hope that answers your question, Yvonne. She's not here, I don't think, right now. But you do have access, everyone has access to review this video. Again, it'll be online. And so please do that. And again, you're right, Yvonne, that it is emotional in a sense, oftentimes. And the soul retrieval that people refer to, if you were to very simply, say if you're with a person who's having a shock trauma, if you have the availability to be with that person, this type of soul retrieval that is most needed and most effective is helping the person to feel comfortable and loved and secured. That's what these other forms of so-called soul retrieval are about. It's becoming objective and facing it. And so we have the ability to comfort that person and help them to feel secure, and that quickens the process. It's helping the person to know to a large degree what has happened. This is what helps the most, I believe, that they are more easily normalized from the shock trauma that just happened. This also helps people to deal with the shock trauma in future times where it won't be repetitive all the time. And the person will be less apt to experience a similar repetitive shock trauma in the future. And so people use all different kinds of things, and I've run into, I don't know how many types of soul retrievals over the past 46 years that people have been, telling me about and whatever. But it all gets down to being objectively observant and helping the person to feel comfortable. That's what really matters. And then they normalize and come back to themselves. And they won't have to repeat it in life, later in life, based upon their shock trauma. So I hope that answers your question, Yvonne. And Diane, my friend, she wrote, "Thank you for answering my question last week. It helped. I have another question. I realize that during times that call for extraordinary measures, people are capable of lifting a heavy automobile off a child that is trapped under it. I've read those stories too, and I was just blown away by them. I love them. There are other amazing stories of angels assisting us. I've read a lot of them too, and I've seen several on stories that were on people put on YouTube explaining what the situations that had happened, and also on the news. and various stations. And if we are able to experience our unlimited capacity as humans, free of restrictions, what are we capable of doing? Hey, a great question. We are we basically unlimited? And what are some of your experiences in this realm? I do not know that healing is an unlimited gift. I do know, she said, that healing is an unlimited gift, but just curious as to how far we can develop. Curiosity keeps me young. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And thanks for asking, Diana. I too believe and accept in an angelic intervention, and I've seen this several times in the past as well as my experience. One time, when I first went into my order, I was up in the novice quarters. No one else was there, and it was on the third floor, and there were bay windows, and I was looking across the street, and I was watching a fellow underneath on a dolly underneath his car, and he was changing. The tire was off, and he was, I think, doing something with the rods. And all of a sudden, I had a thought. Oh my God! If the tire was off, if the car fell on him, and I was picturing this in my head, and if the car fell on him, his whole abdominal cavity would be cut. And so all of a sudden, now the women were not allowed in the male quarters at all. It wasn't. And so, but all of a sudden, a sister, I heard I heard someone running up the stairs, and a sister burst through the door, and she says, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I didn't know what she was talking about. And I looked puzzled. I was puzzled in my face. And she took me to the window, and she says, "Look." And she pointed across the street where the fellow had gone out underneath the dolly. He was no longer underneath the car, but the car fell. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how could this be? I was just thinking that. And she says, "Now you'll learn how to control your thinking." And we have that ability, a total ability to it's almost like a dominion and authority through our thinking to be creative and be recreative in its image, in the image of the godliness, that divinity, the divine one, Yahweh. We have the ability within us. And that was a sample, an example of the ability to do just that. So I totally believe that, I don't know, but I totally believe that was an example of angelic intervention somehow or another. So we have an ability to know ourselves, and as we practice doing that, more is made available to us as we learn to develop our disciplines in life by being truthful, by being honest in every way within us, and by being objectively observant as well. That plays a large part of it. That's where the selflessness comes in, and the humility as we get to know that there's something greater within us that wants to share with us and that loves us so deeply. That's where the empowerment begins to happen. The understanding begins to come to us. So we do have the dominion and the authority over various aspects of this earth in this realm of existence. I remember another time, for another aspect of that, is a couple years later, I was in another order house. I think it was in Boston, and I was on kitchen duty at dinner, making dinner for the house. and my job was to make the salad. And so I figured, oh, great, I can do that. And so I got all the things needed out of the refrigerator, and there were 20 to 25 people I was going to be making the salad for, but there was only one tomato, there was one head of lettuce, there were 2 carrots, and I don't think that there were any other vegetables. And I was scared. I'm telling the guy who's in charge of me, hey, look, this is all we got. He said, make it work. And I didn't know what to do, so I just started cutting it up. And I put it in this one bowl, maybe about 8 or 9 inches in diameter. And no one else gave me any other attention or anything else, and everyone's serving all kinds of things onto the table, getting it ready to be consumed. And so I just put my salad there thinking, oh my God, I want to get yelled at for not having enough of anything here. And so I watched, when everyone started eating, I watched that one salad bowl go around to 20 people, and everyone taking some, or most people taking some salad. And they were having a good amount on their plate too. And when the bowl came back around, there was still plenty of salad in there. There was intervention. It must have been angelic, to varying degrees. And so, as our heart's in something and we continue to follow through with it, things will be taken care of for us and through various interventions. I totally believe in all that too, Diana. And so then, let's see how we're doing here. We're doing great on time. Kathy Hines, my friend, at what level of reality is eternity? That's a little too deep for me. If you don't mind me saying that, Kathy. At what level of reality is eternity? Is eternity eternal? Eternity disconnected from the befores and afters. It is just forever and ever. I guess that makes time before and after. And she kind of answered her own question there. Hi, Patty. Hi, Rita. Hi, Mariko. Good to see you here. Good to see you. And my answer is, I guess, when you look at a flower, you can see its beauty. But do you see all the processes that made the flower and what you see? And we can see even the littler nature spirits that are tending to it. Or can you see the little nature spirits that are tending to it that help it to thrive? And the realms of the guardians over them that are a part of that realm, in a sense. We can't see those either. So there's always more, there's always more. Everything is working and teaming together to make it itself and to make it whole. Even our processes, our soul knows the form that we're going to be taking. We don't see the befores and afters. And, we can see a potential future self of ours, or we can see our, in dreams and meditations, we can see other forms that we have been. But there's so much more to it, and it's always growing, it's always evolving. And it's not in our reality to really understand, only theorize, I believe. Just as the Alpha and the Omega, it's forever. It's well before and well after us. What good would it do to know God's name and origin? We still have to begin to know ourselves first in order to get to that place. And as we begin the process, as we begin this process, I meant to say. Then we begin to understand pieces of pieces. As we begin to get to know ourselves, we then begin to know pieces of pieces. But each piece that we know is a lot of information for us. And we get to see how the before and the after is always intertwined. Everything makes everything. Everything is teaming together. And also realizing that there's a lifetime of understanding even for those small pieces. That's why we can read a lot of the old books. And a lot of the old books, the old spiritual books of Buddhism or Zen or the Gitas or whatever, we can read a story about a teacher, and they'll be or even Siddhartha going into a cave or going into deep meditations, and he'll meditate on one thing, just one, because there's so much other things he can, but he wants to know about one thing. That leads into many things. So it's never really the end of the story. Please understand that. And also realize that there's a lifetime of understanding even for the tiniest piece. We can't possibly know it all. And the mind of the divinity, the godliness, the nameless one, the creator, Yahweh, is always expansive, always growing, always evolving. And if we can catch up with it, great. Good luck. There are no shortcuts, though, that I'm conscious of, or that my teachers are ever conscious of. And eventually we have to discover ourselves. That's what it's really about, which is the pathway to everything else that is more valid, I believe. Our self is not what most people have been taught what it is. Self is a seed. It's a cell within the mind of the godliness, the divinity that we dwell within. The nameless one, the creator, the universal mind. Self is a living consciousness that is so vast and unfathomable, always evolving as we're trying and exploring and stretching our mental and emotional muscles in the exploration of knowing ourselves, aided by the use of our senses that we can identify. And I love the question from Jason. Is there chronic disease, or does it all stem from emotions or beliefs? Sure, there are chronic situations, but I feel that as we take on the chronic situation, the disease or the chronic aches and pains or whatever, we had a propensity to take them on. And there are patterns that we learned at an earlier age or from another time in another place. I truly accept that. But we also have the ability to not necessarily take them on fully or have them at all once we recognize a source of them and going back and see where our shock trauma was, or where the shock trauma could be an injury. It could be witnessing something from someone else having something. Then, if we can take ourselves, like even that person in shock, if they can, depending on how deeply and embedded within them, if we can come back to our senses for a moment and witness ourselves, see ourselves, watching something objectively that happened, then we allow ourselves to go through what I refer to as a healing crisis. It's almost like getting a knuckle sandwich in the arm, and then, ow, that's the shock trauma. And then we start to develop a big black and blue bruise. And then that eventually, the healing crisis of that is going through the dark purples to the greens, the oranges to the yellows, and then it disappearing. Well, if we can take ourselves through that by being aware of the shock trauma, we no longer have to experience that as deeply inside later in life. And those potential future events become less and less and further in between. I hope that answers the question, Jason. So, and there are some things that, we find ourselves taking on. And even though we may not have past similarity to that event, accidents happen too. So, Tamara, how do you suggest protecting yourself from others' energies? I love this question. I always get this, and it's a good question too. And so, hi, Tamara. And thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Years ago at a healing circle, there might have been even over 100 people there. I don't know. Then someone came up with a recent, someone had come up into the circle, and they had a recent diagnosis of cancer. And everyone's really quiet, as this woman expressed. And thanks, Jason. So everyone was really quiet, as this woman expressed, and everyone watched as I began to work with the woman that we all knew so well. And she was a very integral part of the main staff. And then she expressed out loud that as I worked with her, my hand was in her belly. My fingers were touching just like this, but my spiritual fingers extended out, and she felt, when her eyes were closed, she experienced this, and everyone was watching me put my fingers on top of her belly, and I felt my fingers extend out, and they, the spiritual fingers extended out, she felt them inside of her, and she also felt the spiritual fingers pulling something out of her. And she expressed this out loud, that my hands were inside of her pulling something out. And I held it, I held it in my hands like this. And I showed the mind of that distress to everyone. And as it laid cupped in my hands, and it was like a globule, a gray globule, a grayish mass, but it was like living. And then in front of everyone, I brought my hands to my chest like this, and I said, "Watch this." And I put it inside of me, and everyone gasped. Everyone, they kind of really freaked out. And then I told them, for this woman, it's destructive energy. And I can't imagine that. That was my answer to them. I can't imagine that. And to me, that destructive energy didn't exist, but I knew it. But it did exist in her. And so what I did, I went into the mind of that destructive energy, and it was totally non-existent in my mind, and it couldn't exist anymore. So what I'm suggesting is that the cooties don't exist. And if you are willing to take someone's headache, or someone near you is in a bad mood, the cooties don't exist. If someone near you has a foul energy, it's theirs, that they are reliving. They're actually reliving it. That's why they have it. And it may it may not be our place to do anything about it or even to be near them. And we can walk away. But as we do, we're not giving life to it, if that makes sense. Good. And I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. My friend Renee, I did get your note, and please do keep me updated about your daughter, please, and contact me if you're here or you see this later. Review the FaceTime thing. So, Lori, you're here. I saw your name pop up earlier, and I don't know, she wrote, I don't know if people are looking for healing or to be healers. And I didn't even realize this, Lori. You wrote, in the class I took from you, it was a basic healing 101, 23 years ago, as you walked us through the tree of life. I love it. I haven't taught that in 23 years. I think you even had a cassette tape. Wow. It was the basic foundation of healing in a cassette tape. There are many ways to draw energy into your hands. Can you please give examples? The way that I draw energy into my hands, I'm not drawing energy into my hands. I'm drawing energy from within that comes forth from my hands. And that's basically what I do. I'm better than most people with working with healing because I practiced it more. And over the many, many years, this is all that I do in my life for all these years, for 46 years. And so what I've learned to practice is to allow this thing inside the self to come forth and to express itself. That's what happens. No different than when I stand against a wall and I can show everyone the light. It's coming forth from within. It's already there. It's already there. And it's waiting to come forth. Always. Always. Always waiting to come forth. All right. Please, if there's any questions anyone has I can try to answer, please write it out on the screen. I'm running out of questions, and please feel free. After the gathering with y'all, tomorrow night I get ready to take off very early in the morning. I'm going to Seattle, if you hadn't read it already. And what I do is I prepare myself always whenever I'm going to a group, or usually before an appointment. I try to have the time to prepare myself. And in this preparation, I try to take a look at the mind of the group and the individual people, and some that I might know, and what they might be going through in their life. And I perceive, I've learned to trust in my perception. From within, if a picture or a scenario comes to me, or an understanding comes to me, I know it pertains to that group or someone in that group, of what they're going through. And I'm always asking inside, how can I possibly help them or help someone in this group to live an easier life in some way or another, whether it be emotionally, mentally, physically, whatever. And different understandings, once I ask, and I'm really asking from deep within myself, once I ask, then I wait. And I look deeper as I'm waiting, and I keep wondering, how can I help? How can I help? And I leave another part of my mind open that I might perceive of the understandings or pictures or the stories that come to my mind that we can share with them. Because we get them, we get these things because they're about us too. And we wouldn't understand the stories or the understandings unless they were about us. But we're relating to them through what our experience is and has been and potentially will be. But if it's about us, then we can see how close we are with other people. So please, if you have any other questions or anything, ask it, or statements, please do feel free to ask, and I'll see it being typed out here. If anything, I can try to answer, and I'll do my best. And hi, Eileen, good to see you. My friend Eileen Angel, yay. Tanya, hi Tanya. I want to validate something. A few years ago I had seen you, and you said there was something going on with my left, oh, I can't see, it's just my left shoulder. It won't let me see more. I'm so sorry. It won't let me tap on that to see more. If you can finish your sentence about your left, going on with your left shoulder. Sometimes, to answer the first part, sometimes I do get to see potential future things. And if I do, I'll share it with y'all gladly, individually, if pertaining to your life. And usually, I'd like to say, I say usually, but most of the time it's correct. And it's potential. If everything goes on, that's what, all prophecy is a keen sense to the obvious for the moment. But you have an opportunity to say something differently, do something differently, and then that will never come to pass because something has changed. Well, at the same time, if you retain the same patterns, it will fulfill. So sometimes I can tell, like with Tanya, I knew something was happening with the left shoulder. It hadn't manifested yet, and she had no experience of any discomforts in the left shoulder. And it was later in life that she experienced the left shoulder damage. And so things are set up in a sense. If we follow through, this is going to be. Again, all prophecy is a keen sense of the obvious for the moment until something changes, because everyone has the ability of free will not to have it happen. If we can nip it in the bud, then we can eliminate it out of our life. I hope that answers the question, Tanya. I didn't get to see anything after you said there was something going on with my left shoulder, and I explained a little bit. So if there's more to it, please write it out. It won't let me see more of what you had written. And Myrna, my friend, my question for tonight is, how can each one of us support the consciousness of the collective? Oh, here's Tanya. At that time, there was nothing at all, but I could feel. Yes, that I could feel. Right, and I answered that. Great, thank you so much, Tanya. And Myrna, my question of tonight is, how can each one of us support the collective consciousness? And collective consciousness of the collective as the coronavirus virus takes its course. I feel that the situation is a good opportunity for those of us to learn, or if we know it already, to practice being and doing what is required to support the consciousness of the collective. Well, hi Eileen, good to see you. All right, and I'll read Tanya's in a minute here. I believe that if we panic or see it scary, we're in the mind of it. I'm not saying deny it. I know that there is a coronavirus out there. And, again, like others here, I've had various forms of influenza in my life, and everyone has. I believe everyone on Earth has, at least in this country, what I've been told. And so, the various forms of influenza exist. We have colds, we have flus of different types. What I do, and it seems to work until now in my life, is basically, I know that I've had choices in my life if I want to have that cold or if I want that flu. And I've had a choice since I've been conscious of that understanding. I've had a choice for, I don't know how many, maybe 30, 35 years now. And when something is within me, when something I feel, I just got someone's cooties of a cold, or someone sneezed on me or whatever, what I do is I immediately become conscious of that. I immediately see that consciousness of that in my mind. I see that consciousness leaving me like a vapor, a discolored vapor. It can't stay in me. I know that, and I practice that. I'm not saying it won't, but so far it hasn't, and so it seems to work with me. And so that's what I do. And I know that in my life, still be conscious of that the coronavirus is out there. You can't avoid hearing about it or reading about it or watching the news over it. And but I also know that it hasn't, I haven't had contact with coronavirus, but at the same time, with the flus and the colds, the various influenzas, they immediately don't exist in me now. And so I'm assuming that's the way it is. And that's what I know in my life. And it seems to work. I don't know how else to explain that. And Tina, needless to say, my daughter reminded me about the couple of weeks ago, as my entire left shoulder blade is rock hard. I didn't get to see the rest of that. It was too long. It wouldn't let me expand the message, Tanya. And no, it just won't let me. In any case. And are you going to be back in Arizona sometime soon? My daughter and I need to see you for some serious stuff. Lynn wrote the information of when I'm going to be back there, and also on my newsletter. Please, if you go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, whenever it comes out, I think it's a couple times a month, once or two times a month for any major changes on a newsletter that comes out. Thanks, Lynn. I appreciate that. And I do book pretty quickly, so please do feel free to call Sue Cavas or myself. So if going back for a moment, if we see something scary, that means we've taken it on. Or if we hear about something that panics us in any way or alarms us in any way, we're not being objective and observant, and we're going to take it on. If it's in the back of our mind, we're going to take it on, or we're going to be subject to it. So I see it every single time that something like that does happen with me. I perceive of it as a gaseous fume that leaves me in that thought that's embedded in me. I watch it leave. Okay, this is a quick hour, and I am so glad everyone was here. And please do follow through. We do have the apprentice training, which is incredible. You're going to learn how to work with the energies, manipulate them. That's going to be in April. And thanks, Lynn, for putting up Sue's information and my information for the appointments, etc. But in April, online, we're going to have a 3 full-day class. And if you need to miss a piece of it or whatever, it's going to be recorded and in a private room. It will be recorded for you to access what you did miss. And it is coming up in April. And in the meantime, also, I do telephone appointments if anyone's interested. And please, I really want to thank you for being here, and I hope this answered your questions. And I did come from my heart as much as I could on this to its fullest. So, enjoy your life, enjoy your day, and I will see you next week. But please have a lot of questions. I love them. Anything that might have been bugging you or you're curious about. Everyone, have fun. And this will be available to everyone as soon as I finish.